If you involve the community in the front end and listen in the front end, you don't have to stingray shuffle in the back end with fear of them not liking or wanting your projects, because you already know what the city wants, and it makes it much easier to not necessarily reach a consensus, but to find consent in your community. Another thing that I would suggest is, when I look at this list of consultants, though they're all highly reputable and amazing at what they do, has anyone seen where they're from? I don't know if we've once hired some consultants in our own backyard where we're keeping money in our own economy, in our own city, that we've answered 4 or 5 questions to tonight. And I felt like I was, again, studying for the SAT, but how about we start, if we're going to spend this kind of money in our community, let's spend it on local companies in Clearwater, the surrounding Pinellas County areas, and not sending our money to Brooklyn or DC or to places like that. So I think we need to get out of this analysis by paralysis. We need to involve the community on the front end and not the back end, and we need to just take the bullet, make decisions, move forward with the consultants' fees we paid, and keep that money in our own backyard.
So I feel this question is really directed at me. I have had an issue with this for 5 years. 4 years ago, we had a petition that we filled out and we submitted to the city. And we were told, okay, I hear you, and nothing happened. And then we had a study. And I didn't understand why we needed a study, because all I had to do was put my gym shoes on, which I hardly do, and I count the parking spaces, and I know that we're in a deficit. And I know that when Imagine Clearwater starts construction, we're going to lose hundreds more. But a study was done. And then the study came out. And my colleagues and I read through it. It took us 20 minutes to find errors. Errors that skewed the numbers. By mislabeling the buildings as retail, it looked like we had a couple hundred extra. And so it was the private sector that found the errors and brought it to the city's attention. And we were told that it was just a draft, which was not, because it was a final report. And the process began again with the same results. There's still errors. And to me, a person who has fought for parking for years, who's already at this point actually submitted 3 petitions trying to convince of this problem. This is something that is part of the fabric of government, and that's something that I don't want to accept. Having a study is when you don't know the information. If you're using a study to procrastinate, to prolong, to look the other way, it's not acceptable. Not only is it not acceptable, it's unethical, because you're using taxpayers' monies to fund that.
For years, one of my concerns has been cost of city government in terms of project after project and study after study, as it's been said now 2 different times. I would like to know, if we went back in history, how many millions of dollars have been spent by the city on studies. My view is that we have a study and the city puts it in a hermetically sealed jar in a dark closet, never to see the light of day. And then 3 years down the road, we have to figure, well, we ought to re-examine that system again. So let's, as we said, let's find someone else in the community or someone around the country who can give us another view of that same question. My view is that is simply putting off the decision. It's easier not to make a decision. It's easier to say, let's spend another $80,000 on a study than it is to make a decision and to say, let's do it now. I'm in favor of no studies.
Well, believe it or not, I ran on no studies 4 years ago. And we still have studies. So things are hard to change, aren't they? What I did was ask my city manager numerous times, why do we need studies? Why do we have them? Here's what he told me. He said, we have a wonderful qualified staff in many, many areas. But to give them a specific task of how to develop Coachman Park, for example, they would have to stop doing what they do on a normal basis And the city does not have enough personnel to do both things at the same time. This is what the city manager told me. I still think we should try to limit them, and I think we have to some extent, at least as we've shrunken the dollar figure on some of these studies, and I hope we can still make continued progress. Thank you.
But our work, we understand that the reason we have studies, and we do them for cities all over the country, is because often the study is required to get funding. Maybe it's state funding, maybe it's federal funding, maybe it's Wall Street investment. But a lot of these studies are done because it's a prerequisite to getting funding. So we can't get rid of all studies, but we can be efficient in the way we manage them. And I think the way we should manage them is the way the city should operate and be managed as a whole. And that is as a competitive entity. Our city today, Clearwater, is competing. Not just with Tampa, not just with St. Pete. We're competing with other cities all around the country and all around the world for new business, for residents, for everything. And as an enterprise, as an organization, the city of Clearwater needs to operate as if it's competing, as it's trying to be better than all the other cities of our size that might be more attractive than us to businesses and to jobs and to families that want to move here. And so we've got to be efficient, not just to be good stewards of taxpayers' money with how we do studies, but to be competitive, because it is a new era where now cities have to be competitive in everything they do to compete for funding and dollars and for business and economic development. And this is just one example of the way the city of Clearwater can do better.
All right, I think we're on Lina. What is the current status of Clearwater's complete streets projects as of December 31st, 2019? And how would you prioritize these projects, and what will you do to ensure these projects are completed before December 31st, 2023?
So I do know that the city has met in November with various partners, such as the police, the fire, residents, and businesses to discuss the three areas, Morton Plant, connecting it with Imagine Clearwater, and then the Drew area. I truly support Street Smart because as congestion increases, as the world changes, and the needs change, so does the traffic options, or the options to that are available to us to fix it. So the one thing that I'm concerned about, though, is that I want to do it responsibly and thoughtfully, because we have learned from past mistakes that what looked good on paper actually caused us some damage, or at least was not as good as we thought. For example, from Myrtle to Drew, the average household income is $30,000. So they're mostly reliant on public transportation. But 30% of that population is over 65. So it is imperative that we focus on sidewalks and crosswalks, because we need to make sure that it's friendly for wheelchairs and scooters. So these are the intricacies that we need to consider when doing street smart efforts. And in other ways, we're not as, I guess, we're not progressing as fast as I hoped, but we are at least, I see some steps being done. Just not as quickly as I hoped, but that's always the case with me.
Every day, we look in the newspaper and we find out that a bicyclist has been killed or a motorcyclist has been killed almost every day. And I have to attribute that to the fact that our roads, our walks, are not prepared for walking, running, biking, any of those activities. the fact that Drew Street is being worked on, the fact that North Fort Harrison is being prepared, simply says that the city is on its toes in terms of trying to make Clearwater and our surrounding environment friendly for people who walk, ride, bike, and we can reduce the number of fatalities that take place every single day. Every life is worth an improvement in the streets and the sidewalks of Clearwater.
About 3 years ago, a little more than 3, 2 of you in the room came to my office, you know who you are, and said, we need a better Drew Street. It needs to be beautiful. It needs to be safer. And so I have pushed this as fast as I could, which is very slow, because Drew Street, for example, is county, it's state, and it's local. And so you have to go through 3 levels of government to get anything done. But progress is being made. And the concept of complete streets and safe streets is moving ahead in our city, and I hope we can keep it moving ahead. It actually, traffic safety has been mentioned, is one of my key things for my next 4 years here. I was just mortified when I saw a traffic video from one of our traffic cameras where a motorcyclist was coming north on Belcher across Gulf to Bay, and a pickup truck next to him, and a drunk driver, fast driver, went through the red light on Gulf to Bay and smashed that motorcycle right into the side of that pickup truck. And I said, we need to do something more than we're doing now and make our streets safer. And by the way, there are 3 or 4 intersections on Drew Street that we could get moving ahead on and do before we have all the final state, county, and local, because the intersections we kind of can make those safer, and I think that's one place we ought to start. Thanks.
A couple things. One is I love bicycles. I ride my bicycle quite a bit out on the beach where I live. I walk a mile to go get something to eat, do whatever. I walk quite a bit. And so the complete streets concept that it makes these thoroughfares more friendly to bikers and pedestrians, I am all for. We can't solve all our traffic congestion problems by simply trying to figure out how we can move cars more or faster. We've got alternative forms of transportation. Encouraging people to not use their cars, to use other ways to get to places, is an important part of reducing traffic congestion, which is far and away the #1 concern. I think Pinellas County did a survey to see what, as part of the Complete Streets project, is when I saw the statistic, what was the #1 concern Pinellas County residents about traffic? It was congestion. Safety is important. We want to make the streets safer, but most people are concerned about the congestion. My concern, in some respects, which I've expressed to the folks from FDOT and the city who were at the workshops that they had on Complete Streets, was to be careful that we're not simply transferring traffic from Drew through the neighborhoods around them by narrowing Drew. That traffic is going to go somewhere. People are going to use a cut through and start driving through neighborhoods like I've seen the last couple of days in a couple of our neighborhoods. Or they're going to go over to Gulf to Bay, but we have a large workforce in downtown with Morton Plant Hospital, downtown businesses, and the beaches that comes east to west every morning and every afternoon. We want to make sure that although we're trying to make the streets safer, we don't make the neighborhoods around them less safe by the way we implement the program.
For the past 3 years, I've had the privilege of sitting on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Forward Pinellas, and these are exciting projects that I get to be a part of all the time, and Complete Streets is very important. June of 2019, the City of Clearwater enacted the Complete Streets program. And what it's geared to do is to provide safety and a more efficient way to travel for motorists, pedestrians, cyclists, and rapid transit on your cities. An alarming stat is that from 2013 to 2017, our city of Clearwater witnessed over 17,000 accidents. So that's scary, and it's very important that we find ways to protect our families and our children, because as we know, this area is only going to get more congested. There's only going to be more and more cars and more people. As far as the projects that we're working on, my friends discussed some of them, and that's Drew Street, and that's Myrtle, and that's Fort Harrison. But it's also very important to this community. I'm not sure if we realize it, but the FDOT is currently working on plans to put a pedestrian overpass over US 19, connecting your Morningside neighborhood directly to the Bayside, which is a really neat thing to do to keep people safe and keep people mobile and moving and connected. Another important project that we failed to mention to this point is the Courtney Campbell Causeway, and they're connecting Bayshore Boulevard with Courtney Campbell Causeway, and another pedestrian overpass is going there, so you can be on your bike from Reem Wilson Trail down to Bayshore and Safety Harbor, Bayshore, across Courtney Campbell Causeway, and all the way out to Whiskey Joe's on the Causeway in Tampa and back. And I think one way it covers almost 27 miles, so connectivity. But the most important part of Complete Streets is finding ways to keep people safe in their cars, on their bikes, and while they're walking. Thank you.
All right. I think we're on Bud now? Yeah. Okay.
Well, it depends.
What do you know about the 5 largest non-government employers in the city of Clearwater? How will you help ensure those firms, as well as other firms, choose to stay and grow in Clearwater?
Well, it's interesting that some of these companies have been clients of ours over the years. And I happen to be on the board of the Suncoast of the YMCA of the Suncoast. We go all the way from Bryan Dairy all the way up to Citrus County. We have a budget of $30 million. And the YMCA of the Suncoast is a full-time resident of Clearwater. We're not going to go anywhere. We enjoy the amenities that Clearwater offers, and the YMCA is going to be here for a long, long time. Another client of mine, one of the larger groups that we have here, that they are clients sometimes and sometimes not, but one of my views is, how do we keep those people here? And one of my views is, we need, as a city, to encourage them, to give them opportunities, to give them incentives to stay here. We need to communicate with them. We need to be friends with them. We need to make sure that they know that we want them to remain as an active member of the city of Clearwater. So I think it's incumbent on the people up here, the people who become commissioners for the city of Clearwater, to make sure that there is an outreach to those organizations, that we want them, and we hope that they will stay here forever and ever. Thank you.
My grandfather used to play basketball for the YMCA back in 1895 and 1900. That's right, up in New England. And it is a great organization, as a lot of our nonprofits are. I think of RCS, Salvation Army, and it's not that we need to give them money, but we need to give them recognition, and we need to let folks know how much we appreciate all that these companies do for us, for our community, for our lives. Those who are working with the homeless are fantastic organizations. I mentioned before, I'm on the, is that 2 minutes? No. No, 1 minute. Sorry. Fastest 2 minutes. And so recognizing and celebrating the victories and the achievements of these companies are really, really important. I think we ought to take that seriously and just as a community, say thank you and as neighborhoods say thank you, and as individuals say thank you?
Repeat the question, please.
Good question. She wants the question repeated.
Do you need the question repeated?
Five largest companies in
Okay. What do you know about the 5 largest non-government employers in the city of Clearwater, and how will you help ensure those firms, as well as other firms, choose to stay and grow in Clearwater?
Some of those institutions, Morgan Plain Hospital, Pinellas County government, they're not, because of the physical asset, although Pinellas County government's talked about different locations for their headquarters. Some of them, it's a challenge for them to physically move because of the size of their organization. They already have the space. That said, I think our number one challenge with keeping any employer that's a growing employer, a large employer in Clearwater, is affordable housing for their employees. I know the Hub Insurance Company was in our building. They had the space where City Hall is at now. They left and moved to Tampa. And when I was talking with some of their employees before they moved, I said, what ultimately was your decision to move your office from downtown Clearwater to Tampa? They said, well, most of our employees live in Hillsborough County. They live outside Clearwater. Hardly any of them lived in Clearwater. And that's a common thing I find with, I would go out to get voter registration cards and involved in the business community and work downtown. So I thought, well, I'll get some of these cards from registered voters among the folks that work in Clearwater. And it was amazing to me how few people that work in Clearwater live in Clearwater, because they either can't afford it or the housing inventory here is not attractive. And we have a lot of people in our office who drive from Hillsborough County or Pasco County because they can't find affordable housing even close to Clearwater. So I think that's the number one challenge. If at some point an employer is having all their employees drive a long distance to come to Clearwater to work, that's our greatest challenge in keeping those large organizations in Clearwater.
I think one thing us politicians are good at, that's circling around the question and coming back to it. But I'll give you 5 real quick. Honeywell, Tech Data, MarineMax, Pods, Baycare. Those are 5 real large corporations in Florida and Clearwater that call this place home. Honeywell has over 40,000 employees that work for them. Tech Data just sold in December for $5.4 billion. Those are large organizations with a lot of people. I think it's important to not stop there, though. The city of Clearwater is the county seat in the area, which means there's thousands of Pinellas County jobs that are housed right here in our city of Clearwater. That's very important to our economy. Another thing important is we have some great higher learning educational schools and programs in this city, from St. Pete College to the new Nova Southeastern Osteopathic Medicine, College of Medicine that's opening up. I think they're having their first students walk on campus in August, so that's very important to our economy. As far as what we can do to keep them, I think we mentioned it earlier, for 10, 12 years, the chamber and a lot of professionals in our city keep complaining that the city of Clearwater is not friendly to do business with. They're not engaging, they're not inviting, it's not a cooperation, they're not my teammate or my friend, it feels more adversarial. And I think we need to flip that, as I said earlier. We need to change that client-customer approach and become more citizen-oriented, and we'll find better success. And we'll have the ability to not only retain businesses, to help those businesses grow, but there's going to be businesses from St. Pete, Tampa, and surrounding areas that are going to want to call Clearwater home. I think it's important that we start making some of the processes in building and planning and zoning a little more seamless, a little more efficient, so we're not wasting people's time or money, and we don't have overreaching regulations and permitting processes. Thank you.
So to add to Michael's list, we also have Macy's Credit Services, and most recently, our very own KnowBe4 became a unicorn company, so that was something we needed to celebrate. Clearwater is home to 10 major tech companies, and we need to support that path. I would like to continue with the traditional incentives for expansion. and support these companies to become Fortune 500 companies. But as well as focus on the ecosystem of startups. That's the future. I would love to support new companies and support them through the process to become like the Honeywells and the Pods. So that's an element that needs to be included as well. Which brings me back to his point, and we have to change the mindset that private versus public. We have to look at it as a partnership. We have to coexist. The public sector cannot exist without the private. It's dependent on its funding and its salaries based on our taxes, and we look for the city to sustain the city and give us the services. So that relationship has to heal, and it has to be more of a collaborative relationship. Once that's accomplished, then everything will be accomplished faster and more efficiently. But this disconnect and combativeness, it is affecting our ability to retain businesses. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Bob, you're up. What are your top 5 priorities for the Clearwater Community Redevelopment Area, the CRA, and how do you plan to see that those priorities are acted upon and completed?
Most of you know what the CRA is. And
case we don't.
it is most of the downtown of Clearwater, from the harbor up to about Highland or so, and from Drew Street north to about, well, it kind of changes on the south side, but the downtown. And there are at least 5 things that can be done. The goal is to improve the central city economy, both in housing and in businesses, leveraging what we've already talked about, public and private partnerships. Revitalization is another one of the goals, and rehabilitation, stabilization of the businesses. And so there are 5 things that I think ought to be on our list to do with the CRA priorities. One is to ensure public safety, both with streets, with crime. We do have a homeless problem in downtown Clearwater. It is improving year after year. I've seen it. Number 2, increasing residential market and workforce availability of housing. And we are moving ahead on that. The city just closed on an 80, agreed to build an 80 or 81 unit apartment building that is mixed use, affordable workforce housing. Increased commercial and office space, and that's not just, well, all right. And the last one, provide recreational opportunity. And that's what we are doing with Investment Clearwater.
I think we need to do 3 things to make our CRA successful. One thing is, as some of the other candidates have talked about, it's anecdotal, but we all hear that it takes much longer to get things permitted in Clearwater as a city. And that's been a frustration for some of those businesses that have tried to start up downtown, is that the permitting process seems to take much, much longer than it does in neighboring communities. So we need to get our CRA to help motivate, inspire, and encourage the city staff to help our businesses start off successfully by getting up and running faster. Second thing is we need to follow through on our commitments. Early on, some of the businesses that established the CRA struggled to get some funding that was promised to them. There was challenges there. That sends a bad message to others who might want to invest in the CRA and get their business going there. And the third thing we need to do, and it's not just for the CRA, it's for the city as a whole, we need to do a better job of messaging. We in Clearwater tend to let negative messaging control what it makes it look like to others outside of Clearwater as Clearwater is not a good place to live, work, and play. And we need to be on top of better messaging to make it the place that we all know that it is. It's a great place to live, work, and play. We need more positive messaging for the Clearwater and the opportunity in Clearwater, the city of Clearwater, particularly in the CRA, to encourage more outside investment into Clearwater.
I had somebody before the forum come up to me and say, Michael, make sure you say your name. You keep forgetting. So, Mike Mannino, hashtag we like Mike. You can all use it if you want, but I'm going to charge you for it. CRA, number one priority in the CRA, Community Redevelopment Agency, should be to attract residents and visitors to our downtown district, and that's their number one priority. One of the biggest challenges that they face is changing the perception of what downtown is. And it's not just a perception from Countryside or from Morningside. There's a worldly perception that Clearwater lumped together is creepy and odd and weird, and that's not the case. If you go down there, I know Lina lives, works, and plays down there, and we've been down there quite a bit at Tequila's, and we have a run club down there. And like Frank said at the last forum, you're not going to catch Scientology. So feel free to go down there and enjoy the businesses and change it, see it for yourself. Another thing, very important, you have to create housing opportunities, whether it's affordable housing or workforce housing. You need to incentivize investments for local businesses and retail shops and restaurants to open their doors and do businesses. We also need to make sure that we are finding consensus within our community to activate Coachman Park and not continue to do, the Stingray Shuffle that we're discussing. Let's stop with the consultants on the consultants, and let's start moving forward as we are doing with this plan and activate that park. I think one of the last things that we need to do, and we talked about it earlier, is proactively market that CRA district as an opportunity zone that's been federally designated. So making sure that we attract new residents, diversify that downtown area with foot traffic so people begin to live, work, and play in that downtown community is the CRA's goals.
So my 5 priorities first would be to offer incentives for diverse businesses. And it's very important to emphasize diverse. Just incentivizing different businesses that are the same, all pizza parlors, all wine bars, will not be successful because we're not at the point right now where we can support 2 or 3 of the same. We would just cannibalize everything. So diverse businesses would be key. And I just wanted to do a little sidebar. Don't look as incentives for these businesses as handouts, because it is not. These business owners care about Clearwater, and they are jeopardizing their livelihood by choosing downtown Clearwater to put their business, because they could easily just go a couple of miles down the road and have proven success. So this incentive is to offset the risk